movies.
She's gonna sue him. It's gonna be like a real. It's gonna be a real Jackie Coogan situation.
You don't build a sweater. You make a sweater.
Jackie Coogan was the child actor who sued his parents because they stole all of his money. He later went on to play Uncle Fester on the original Addams Family. Coogan's Law is named after him, and it prevents the exploitation of child actors. That was the joke I made.
Okay.
So after we look at his sweaters...
I learned something. I don't think I got a joke.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I've always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you.
Well, it's another beautiful day in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
It's a beautiful day in our neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a little overcast, but it's all right.
It's a lousy day in our neighborhood.
It's hot.
It's hot and it's overcast.
Yep. I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew. We're goofballs. Let's talk about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Specifically, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood episode 1472.
Let's make an opera. It just makes an opera again.
Yeah, the whole week is called Makes an Opera.
Yeah.
This one is sort of themed on sweaters.
Yeah, a lot of sweater stuff.
It's this episode is volume 1, episode 12 in the Amazon collection. If anybody's still following that.
I mean, it's
the easiest way to find it online.
Yeah, true enough.
So Mr. Rogers enters his house holding a folder.
He's got a folder.
He drops the folder on his bench, and then he swaps sweaters and pulls 3 sweaters out of the closet.
Yeah, grabs like 3 or 4 sweaters out of the closet, throws it down on the bench. Because he's going to tell us about his sweaters.
Yes, and in the folder is the person who makes his sweaters.
His dear sweet mother.
His dear sweet mother.
A photograph of his mother.
Yes, she cannot fit in a folder.
She isn't herself in the folder.
No.
That would be frankly wacky.
As Mr. Rogers is finishing his theme song, he says the line, "We are television neighbors, aren't we?" And I was like,
yeah.
You tell me, Mr. Rogers, you came up with this term.
This is your premise.
If you don't know whether we're television neighbors, I certainly don't know whether
He's really
we're
pleased with
neighbors.
himself for having thought of this whole television neighbors thing.
If you say we are,
Yeah,
we are.
no, this is solid. This show makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. So he talks about how his mother makes all the sweaters on the show and how she makes them for lots of other special people.
So we look at his sweaters. They're all a little different.
Yeah.
Different cable in places.
His mother makes good sweaters. He's not wearing ugly sweaters on the show just to appease his mother.
No.
She does
No,
good work.
the sweater he's wearing in this episode is like gray with like red trim along the zipper and around the
I was wondering if his
cuffs.
mother made that one because it looked different in style from the others, but I assume since he didn't
I would have liked to see that one up close because that was an impressive one. After we look at his sweaters, he says, "Oh, I just remembered," or whatever. Bob Trow.
Awkward segue.
I mean,
No. I mean, he makes
it is kind of just like, oh,
there's a lot of awkward
had
segues in this episode.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to point them out.
had a sweater making machine
Yeah.
that he was working on last week. Let's go see if he still has it, and I'll show it to you. And that is when I wrote in my notes, I bet he still does have it.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to get there and find out he just has a
That
different
wouldn't be
machine.
much of a...
He does have a different machine, though.
He does have a different machine. So we take our walk through Diorama Town to Bob Trow's Black Box Theater / workshop.
Yeah, right. And he's first showing off a bubble machine.
Yeah. He's playing with the bubble machine we see through the window, and I have in my notes, oh, he's incredibly Robert Troll. I don't know how I missed it.
I was wondering.
He does have a mustache now.
Yeah, we haven't seen Robert Troll in this era. But I was wondering if maybe it would be more apparent now that you know they're the same person.
Yeah, no, it's the way he moves when he's playing with the bubbles is super duper. And he even has a bit of that voice in his voice. Yeah. But yeah, he's playing with a bubble machine.
Now about this bubble machine, as soon as I saw the bubble machine, I was like, oh, he's made this bubble machine because it's going to be used, if not in this episode, then later in the week, because we have a bubble opera.
This is showing up in the opera. Or being used in the opera.
And so Mr. Rogers says, "Oh, so why do you have this? Why are you working on a bubble machine?"
Yeah.
And rather than saying because they need it for the opera, Bob Trow says, "I was working on an underwater movie," and I was like, "No, no, you're not. You're like, building it for the opera." And
well, I was like, "What is Bob Trow's job?" He just putters around and shoots because it's a very
he fixes stuff.
It's a very specific sort of retired person thing to do. It's like, I want to make like an underwater movie. Let's get a bubble machine out. And he
was probably VFX coordinator for one of Mr. McFeely's productions.
But like, I feel like this is a recurring, especially in something like the opera where everything is sort of building. I feel like the bubble machine that is later going to be used in the opera. Is there's like a collective unconsciousness thing where like all of these things from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood sort of feed into
like sort of like when you
inspire
when you go to sleep and dream about the things you did this day. Instead you go to sleep and the things that you did that day start affecting
mushed up
affecting an alternate universe.
But
it says underwater movie, but that didn't sound very believable to me. I'm wondering if maybe there's like a gag order on acknowledging the land of make-believe. And so he's like...
That's dark.
He's like, well, what am I doing with...
It does sound like... I almost wonder if he was joking when he said he was making an underwater movie. Because later, Mr. Rogers is like, you could use this for or would you use this for an underwater movie?
Yeah, see, there's
real...
There's an unspoken understanding that this is not for an underwater movie and that it is for the opera at the end of the week. But they can't talk about that because at some point the producer says you have to make the distinction between real and pretend. And then the borders got strict.
I feel like surely Mr. Rogers is the producer, though.
I don't know.
I don't know who outranks him. So then he's got a knitting machine that he's been fixing. Sure enough, it's just off camera right. And wouldn't you know it, the lady who he was fixing it for shows up.
Ray Gould is her name.
Gould.
Gould. I heard Gould.
Well, it's spelled Gold.
Oh, you looked it up?
No, it's in the credits.
Oh, I missed it.
Also, isn't Ray Gould...
Rachel Gould?
Yeah, that's what I think it sounds like her. Anyways, it's a knitting machine. I don't know that there's that much... interesting to say about it. Like, it's an interesting machine, but
not much else happens.
We can't describe it good in a podcast.
They use it. Mr. Rogers gets to use it, and she's like, "Be careful. You got to be careful with any of these machines, so you don't break the needles like we're broken. Which is why I brought it to this fix-it man,
at least ostensibly."
And immediately after she says that, Mr. Rogers like gets giddy and starts.
He really starts tearing away on it. Zip, 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 zip.
And I was like, I hope he knows how to use this thing because he's definitely being a bit more reckless.
Yeah, he definitely, like, you get the impression that they definitely went over this in rehearsal. Because that is, I feel like, not a decision that... Mr. Rogers is a very conscientious person about always checking and asking before.
Although he does get excited, as we saw with
get excited, but I mean,
he
has
28
to use it even.
Ribbon icing nozzle.
Well, that's true. Mr. Rogers gets an idea in his head. He's hard to shake off of it. Oh, there is a good bit where when they're describing the knitting machine and how you slide this thing back and forth and it knits, Mr. Rogers is like, but it takes a person to design it. And I'm like, Mr. Rogers wants to be very clear that this knitting machine is not coming for your job.
No, and in some other episodes that I've seen that weren't for this podcast, Mr. Rogers does have a habit of when he has guests on that use technology, he makes a point to underline this thing that it still takes a person.
That's interesting, and we'll circle back to this later in the episode because I wrote down a note I think that pertains to that.
Okay.
But before that, we head back to Mr. Rogers' house and pretty much straight into the land of make-believe.
Yeah, he tells the trolley what we're going to pretend about. And
Lady Elaine's a knitter, it turns out.
Lady Aberlin.
Lady Aberlin, yep. I was looking at Lady Elaine in my notes.
I was going to say we'll get there, but no.
Yeah, we're never going to get there.
I'm sorry, podcast neighbors.
Yeah.
So he says that they would imagine Lady Aberlin and Handyman Negri making a sweater. But he also says after, like, he's like, that's what we'll pretend about. And then he added on to the end, he said, it's also fun to think of Prince Tuesday and Anna at 6 or 7 years old in school.
Yeah.
And so, like, are they not 6 or 7 all the time? Like, it sounded as though he was saying...
At some point they were born.
Right.
Or
like
Prince
about 10
Tuesday
years
was.
ago. About 10 years ago.
Is that when he was born?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was 1 week before the previous week.
Oh, right. Yes, I remember you saying that now. So, 11 years ago he was born, and at some
Mr.
point...
Rogers isn't acting like, oh, they are 6 or 7. He's saying, this week, let's say 6 or 7. Yeah. So it's really, I don't know.
But like, I mean, they continue on at school sort of indefinitely.
But is next week Mr. Rogers going to say, let's imagine Tuesday and Anna maybe 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, 15, 20. It's weird.
Getting jobs.
Too, that, like, why do you specify their age? Why not just say these characters are at school?
Well,
like, is age
but he doesn't say,
deal
like,
for kids?
He doesn't say, let's imagine Prince Tuesday and Anna. By the way, those characters are 6 or 7. He says, it's fun to imagine them at age 6 or 7.
Yeah.
It was a weird way
I guess at 6 or 7 is, like, when you start school.
Mm-hmm.
And most of Mr. Rogers' audience is preschool. So maybe that's the reason for it.
For the harsh reality.
He's like saying, no, these kids are 6 or 7, so they might be at school even though you're not. Anyway, so Lady Elaine and...
Lady Aberlin.
Well, it doesn't matter. First we have to go to the land of make-believe.
Let's hop on the trolley.
Let's hope Handyman Negri hasn't carelessly put something on the tracks of the trolley again.
What was the last thing you put
there? I think it was a cake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that did happen once.
Yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen again. What a sticky disaster that was.
Yeah.
Sugary. Icing isn't really sticky.
Real gooey kablooey.
It's more of a... Yeah, right. I wonder if the villagers ever found Hamster Huey's head.
Who knows? So here we are in the land of make-believe.
Here we are in the land of make-believe. And sure enough, there's Lady Aberlin and Handyman Joe Negri and... Lady Aberlin has a and
King Friday shows up later.
Shortly after. Is Lady Elaine already here? No, she shows up.
In
a second
when they start talking about her.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. So Lady Elaine's knit a sweater.
Lady Aberlin's knit a sweater.
Lady Elaine's knit a sweater too.
We'll get to that. So they've knit a sweater for Reardon.
I forgot his name and had to go back to find it.
So they're discussing that when King Friday approaches with a fanfare of trumpets.
Right.
And he's holding a letter R. And he says, here's the R for Reardon's sweater. So I guess...
It's a Letterman sweater.
Well, I'm wondering why... Does the king have like some kind of a...
It's an official R.
Special equipment?
It's a royal R. Yeah, it's a...
Like, what's his hobby that he was the one commissioned with making the R?
Yeah, so they sort of... I don't know. They talk about... She sticks the R on.
Yeah.
There. I can't tell if she actually sticks it on or if it's just held on with, like, static electricity and later they affix it more firmly.
Maybe. But they, while they're doing this, they decide that Lady Aberlin in the opera should play a sweater maker.
She just says, like, I like making sweaters.
And for the record, telephone operator, no good. Bubble blower, professional bubble blower, good.
Sweater maker, fantastic. Perfect.
And so...
It feels a little pushy almost on Joe Negri's part. Because,
what do you mean?
Like, Lady Elaine Lady Aberlin is just like, oh yeah, I like making sweater. I made this sweater. I enjoy making sweaters. And Joe Negri just jumps in there and is like, you could play a sweater maker in the opera. And I'm like, whoa.
Maybe she had something else.
Maybe she doesn't want to play a sweater maker in the opera.
Maybe they were brainstorming before and didn't like any of the
Maybe
ideas.
she's not... Maybe she doesn't want to be the sweater person in the land of make-believe.
She's been around long enough that she's established her character more broadly than
that.
And so, anyways...
They mentioned that Lady Aberlin wants to be the hummingbird.
No,
shit!
Get it right!
I got it wrong, I did!
They mentioned that Lady Elaine wants to be a hummingbird.
And who should appear but Lady Elaine Fairchild?
She appears when they say, I wonder who makes Lady Elaine's sweaters. And then she pops out.
No, that's her second.
Oh,
First,
yeah,
she pops up and she's just like talking about, the opera. I want to be a hummingbird in it.
Right.
And how great this hummingbird character that she has is.
Yeah,
she's really worked out the backstory.
Yeah, she's doing the
on Hildegard Hummingbird.
She's really running a whisper campaign.
Yeah,
in support of
so
this.
she's gonna sell it, and how she's super excited about this character. I don't know why, because it seems like she's living herself out real well.
Lady Elaine just pops up to ask if Reardon is there yet.
Right, is she there yet?
And then they say no, and so she leaves almost as fast as she...
Yeah, she disappears immediately, and after she's gone, Lady Aberlin says, I wonder who makes Lady Elaine sweaters. And Lady Elaine pops up again.
Yeah, and she says, I made it. Toots. Nillero, Perlero, I always say.
Nittero, Perlero.
And then we have like a really awkward...
Which at first I didn't even realize, like I thought, but no, she means like knit a row.
I think she's saying knit a row, pearl a row, but she's condensing it to the boomerang, zoomerang.
Yeah, it feels like she's just putting some flourishes on knit and pearl.
She says, knit a row, pearl a row, I always say. And then she jumps straight back into her whisper campaign. Hildegard Hummingbird can do anything, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I've got to go.
Yeah. She's like Hildegard Hummingbird is clearly just Lady Elaine Fairchild.
Mm-hmm.
This very, very competent and empowered woman who can do whatever she wants. I think it's after Lady Elaine Fairchild says she's always knitting sweaters and disappears. King Friday says, apropos of absolutely nothing.
Yeah, he says, I like my operas on Fridays.
Yeah.
Like, they don't say, so anyways, the opera. Yes, I do like my operas on Fridays.
Yeah.
It's just...
There's like
a silent beat after Lady Elaine leaves, and then I like my operas on Fridays.
They're like, whoa, that's soon.
He's like, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but we are having it Friday.
Yeah.
And then
I forget what she pops in to say, but Lady Elaine pops up a third time, and this time she pops up from inside the sweater that Lady Aberlin's holding.
Lady Aberlin's holding up the sweater, and Lady Elaine pokes her head out of the neck hole or the buttons.
Out of the neck hole of the sweater.
She's just everywhere.
Yeah, she is all over the place. It's great. I love it.
Beetlejuice.
Yeah. She just pops and goes and disappears and teleporting around.
I don't even know what she says when she pops.
I don't remember. I was so distracted by the fact that she popped out of the sweater. It was great. Oh, that's why Lady Elaine Fairchild popped up again. Lady Aberlin and Joe Negri are talking about how Joe Negri has to go do some repairs on the castle.
Uh-huh.
Lady Aberlin has to head over to the schoolhouse, so they ask to be dismissed.
Right.
From King Friday's presence, and he dismisses them, and then Lady Elaine Fairchild pops out of the sweater, and she says, am I dismissed too?
Right.
And King Friday's like, yes, everyone in this garden is dismissed.
So good.
Yeah.
Lady Aberlin says she has to go to someplace else.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in reference to a song, or if the school that she's going to is named the someplace else.
The school is in someplace else.
Okay.
Which is like a neighboring region near the land of make-believe, is my understanding.
Okay. So the scene then shifts to this school.
To the schoolhouse.
In someplace else. We've got a lot of characters in this scene.
Yeah, we've got, and a lot of them are new. We've got the cow lady teacher, who isn't voiced by Fred Rogers.
No, voiced by a lady. Her name is Harriet E.
I'm
Cow.
Not sure if she's voiced by a lady, but she is voiced by somebody else.
I'm pretty sure she's voiced by a lady, but I could be correct.
I think it might be Bob Trow.
Are you just trying to brain mess with me because you didn't realize?
No, I definitely. No, I definitely feel like it was somebody.
And we also have Prince Tuesday for the first time.
Prince Tuesday, who is dressed in a very Quest for Glory sort of outfit.
Right. He's also voiced by someone other than Mr. Rogers, and I think Anna is too.
That could be. Anna's the platypus. We haven't met. Well, I guess we've met one platypus.
We've met one platypus, but we haven't met Anna.
We haven't met Anna. We haven't been to the platypus mound yet.
And so that's 3 characters thus far, but we also have
Daniel
Corny.
Tiger.
Daniel Tiger
Daniel
is
Tiger's
another
the third student.
And Corny is a guest speaker at the school.
Yeah, Corny especially is here to talk about rocking chairs, which he makes in his factory.
Is the one thing he's an expert on.
And he is an expert, to be fair.
That's true.
He is well versed on the subject of rocking chairs because he's talking about the construction of rocking chairs, and then they sort of ask questions.
They open the room to questions.
Yeah. The questions are, do you make rocking horses the same way? And he's like, yeah, you build a horse, you put the rockers on it. You build a chair, you put the rockers on it. Same basic principle. And then Anna gets deep with the, why does rocking in a rocking chair
make you sleepy?
Which is an insane question to ask, and exactly the sort of question a child would ask.
Why do rocking chairs... Yeah.
But Corny especially is ready with an answer. He's like, well, there's a few schools of thought on this.
Yeah. He says, some people think it's the breeze that it makes when you rock. Yeah. I think it's probably because it reminds you of when you were rocked by your mother.
Yeah. I think those are...
And as I was listening to this, I was like, I have my own theory. I think you're just occupying your mind with something other than sitting in a chair.
It just distracts you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of like the mother theory.
So this is our, I think, fourth awkward segue of the episode. There's a lot of just abrupt subject changes in this episode. And in this one, Anna Platypus, after hearing why rocking chairs might make you sleepy, she says, oh, so that's why they might make you sleepy. I want to go home now.
That's right.
And they don't even really say anything about this.
No.
It seemed like an improv line, just how random it was.
Like that's kids' far. It's like, I'm done with school now.
And they're like, well, do we have any other questions?
Well, no. Then the teacher, who's a cow,
Harriet E. Cow, she has a nameplate.
Oh, okay. Harriet E. Cow says, well, no, you can't go home yet. The trolley will be here soon. I think she means to take them home. But first, Lady Aberlin is going to come and talk about sweaters. Really packing in the guest speakers this
Yeah, how many people are in this classroom now? We've got 3 students and we've got 6 people in here.
I'm just surprised you bring the lady in to talk about sweaters the same day you bring the guy in to talk about rocking chairs.
Oh, I thought she just went to show up.
I feel like No, she's there to talk about sweaters, I thought.
It was really...
why would she be... Is she going to pick somebody up?
I don't know. We've had humans and puppets interacting for a while, but I thought it was really distressing to see a human just pop up in the background of this like puppet-sized schoolhouse.
This giant schoolhouse indoors. It
felt real Attack on Titan.
The first time that we've clearly no, these puppets are standing on the ground.
And
here's somebody
as
behind
soon as this human actor pops up in the background, it goes from feeling like a regular classroom to they are on a mezzanine, and then there's a huge gymnasium
for people to stand in
for 5 to 6 foot humans.
It is a little weird. So once sweaters are introduced, or actually before Lady Aberlin shows up, but sweaters have been mentioned. Daniel Tiger,
always keen to make connections. He's going places.
Says why? What is this? He says, why aren't there sweaters for rocking chairs?
I think he was asking, has anyone made
a sweater for a rocking chair?
And everyone's like, good one, Daniel Tiger. Always the class clown.
Yeah,
and he's like,
no, I wrote it down. I didn't mean it to be funny.
Yeah,
which is super relatable. Because I was like, oh, that's a good joke. It's like, no, I didn't. I did not mean it to be funny.
He just wants to know because chairs have arms and backs.
Chairs have arms and backs and legs, and people have arms and backs and legs. And
can't they both have sweaters?
Can't they both have sweaters? Yeah. Daniel Tiger is a real philosopher, real outside of the box thinking. Mm-hmm. I wonder if there is. Now I'm trying to think if there is something to be learned about the psychology of each of these people based on their questions.
What do you mean?
Prince Tuesday has a very...
What was his question?
Prince Tuesday's question was, are rocking horses made the same way as rocking chairs?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very straightforward...
He's a bad interviewer.
It's a very... he is King Friday's son.
Yeah, but his question is just like a yes or no question. You don't really get a creative answer with this.
True.
Are they? Yes or no?
Yeah, yes. That's true. It's a very closed-ended question, but also it shows an interest in like logistics and things. So Anne's question is more about feelings and psychology. And then Daniel Tiger has a very abstract question.
Yeah,
it's sort of a creative thinking question. He's an artist. He also lives on a clock, which He lives in a clock and he wears a watch, which I feel like already that's
putting him in surrealist territory.
Yeah. Something about living in a giant clock and wearing a watch just immediately makes you sort of an eccentric.
Anything else happen in the schoolhouse?
Except he lacks the confidence of an eccentric like Lady Elaine Fairchild has. Not really, no. He didn't mean it to be funny. Prince Tuesday looks like Quest for Glory. They don't even talk about sweaters except that Lady Elaine, Lady Aberlin. Except that
this is a new record.
Well, this is the most that they've been in an episode together.
I suppose so.
Except that Lady Aberlin is very open to the idea of rocking chair sweaters.
Yeah, I don't think I remember anything that she said. As soon as she came in, I was just distracted.
She says, "Oh yeah, you could. That
monstrosity.
Would be interesting." And then she proposes that she and especially could go into business together, making besweatered rocking chairs.
How did especially respond to that? Because that seems like
he was sort of like, "Oh, I could make the rocking chairs, and you could." They were just,
but like, I want to know, did he brush her off?
No,
because that definitely seems like the sort of thing like I don't want to make a commitment right now.
I think he seemed open to the idea, but I don't think they made any plans.
Okay.
I mean, really, what they're describing is upholstery.
Yes,
that's the reality of it. You put a sweater.
You really want
to
learn that word before you build the sign for your shop.
Yeah.
Build a big sign that says chair sweaters, and then someone says, "Is this different from upholstery?"
Or else it's like those doilies that grandmothers put on their furniture.
Right.
Back when this was a show that was on. I don't know what grandmothers do now, but I don't think it's doily furniture.
And now we jump over to the museum go round.
Up to the museum.
I gotta say,
where Reardon shows up.
This episode in Make Believe is just as fast paced as the last one. I feel like in the 9 years that we missed, the writing got a lot punchier, and I can barely keep up with my notes now.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a matter of it's an opera week, so there's a lot happening.
Of characters, yeah.
So Reardon shows up. He looks the 70th.
Yeah.
He's got a real Tom Selleck with the mustache.
Yeah, he does look like, yeah. But he's sort of walking around the neighborhood.
He's wearing browns is the thing. Yeah, he's arrived.
And he's just sort of like taking it all in, saying, here I am in the land of make-believe. He's got
good to be back.
He's got a very charming voice.
I speak like a stage actor and broadcaster.
Yeah. I speak like I act in an opera.
I project to the back of the room.
Is there speaking in an opera, or is it exclusively singing?
In an opera, it's exclusively singing.
Okay, that's the difference from a musical.
But in a light opera, it's more like a musical. And in fact, light opera and musical are very intermingled. Light operas are things like your Gilbert and Sullivan Pirates of Penzance. But also, some musicals have been called light operas. As we'll get to, in fact, because Lady Elaine Fairchild shows up.
Well, she pops up in the museum go round behind,
and immediately starts flirting with Reardon.
Well, she says, "Oh, look, it's Reardon," and then Reardon, like he's not surprised or thrown aback as most people are when
Lady Elaine Fairchild pops up out of nowhere.
He says, the first voice I hear, Lady Elaine."
I mean, they're both flirting with each other.
Well, I wrote down Reardon, Elaine equals chemistry.
I wrote Lady Elaine and Reardon are mad flirting.
They definitely are.
They are super duper flirting. So she pitches him on Hildegard Hummingbird.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, "Well, I can't," or she's like, let's go work this out now. And he says, "Well, I can't. I have a commitment to work in." And he calls it a light opera.
Right.
Tonight.
And then he sings a bit of that.
He sings a bit of it. And this is my beloved from Kismet.
Okay.
It's a real, and I looked it up on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia describes it as just a musical.
Oh.
So that's just how fuzzy the line between musical and light opera really is.
I learned something today, did you?
Yeah, we learned about light opera.
So he starts singing a piece from this light opera / musical.
Yeah.
And the camera just kind of zooms in for the duration on Lady Elaine, who's just like basking in his song.
She's like basking and dancing around to it, and it is some impressive. There's a lot of chemistry, like you say.
Well, and then if there was a
love song already,
if there was any doubt to the chemistry, after he finishes the song, Lady Elaine says, Wouldn't it be nice if it was just the two of us in this opera?
Yeah.
She says, I could be Hildegard, the hummingbird poking the bubbles, and you could be the TV newsman.
Just drops that. Oh, then you're the TV newsman.
And he was like, oh yeah, that would be nice, but I think we should include other people. And then she like brings the newsman, and he's like, wait.
TV newsman?
TV newsman?
And she's like, oh yeah, I think you should be the TV newsman. And he's like, well, I guess that's an angle.
He's like, you don't get to decide what I am. But then as he's leaving the scene, he's like, okay, so we've got a hummingbird, a TV newsman. Like, she's already...
It could work.
She's already convinced him.
Yeah, for as infatuated as they clearly are with each other, he's still a little hesitant to some of her wild ideas about what goes in this opera.
I mean, he's
a professional.
He would be the leveling force in the relationship. She's the wild one, and he's the down-to-earth.
Yeah, she's the Lorelai Gilmore, and he's the Luke Danes.
Exactly.
So less curmudgeonly. I mean, it depends on the episode and the season with Luke.
I don't know.
There's already a Gilmore Girls podcast, though. We can't do that. So he heads off to pop into King Friday, but we never see it because before he gets a chance, the trolley swings by and whisks us back.
Well, before whisking us back, the trolley swings by and Reardon says, "Ah, trolley, how are you doing today?" And then he makes small talk with the trolley.
I mean, he's a friendly guy. We never see him go to Sweater, sadly. He missed the welcoming committee.
Oh, that's true.
And we're back to Mr. Rogers' house.
I mean, we need to go back to Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Well, I
need a moment for the trolley transition too.
Well, I already said the trolley comes by and sweeps us back to Mr. Rogers' house.
Oh, I guess I could have done it during there.
Yeah, you could have. You had to talk about whatever.
I just thought it was funny how Reardon has this chemistry with everyone.
Everyone says hi to the trolley.
I don't know.
He's a friendly guy. Really, it's the trolley who has chemistry with everyone.
Sure.
When you think about it. He never does get a sweater, though, Reardon.
No, I mean, maybe he'll have it in the next episode. Maybe he'll wear it
in the next episode. I bet it shows up in the opera. I wonder how they're going to work sweaters into the opera.
So, Mr. Rogers kind of recaps the Land of Make-Believe. He says, Reardon's back, and people have lots of good ideas about lots of things. And I was like, wow, Mr. Rogers, you've just solved all of our podcast naming descriptions.
Yeah.
Reardon's back, and lots of people have lots of ideas about lots of things.
We should write that down and use that. And then there's a ding-dong on the ding-door, because Mr. McFeely's here with a speedy delivery.
Yes.
He still hasn't done the song.
No, I still haven't heard it.
I forgot until, just this last week. Oh, yeah, there's a speedy delivery song.
It's the one song you know how to play on piano.
Oh, I was going to use that anecdote. That's not true. I can also play Yankee Doodle. And, the both parts of the Heart and Soul.
Heart and Soul.
I can play Heart and Soul. I mean, as well as I can play anything, which is to say, pretty badly.
Mr. McFeely says he's come over because Bob Troe wanted to know if you wanted to see this special videotape I have here. Yeah. But later we find out that Mr. McFeely produced this video.
Yeah, so I don't know what Bob Troe has to do with anything, except that it is, I guess, in his... Maybe this was how Bob Troe figured out how to fix the knitting machine. He's like, I don't know how knitting machines work. Mr. McFeely, I need you to special deliver me some footage from inside of the factory.
Maybe.
Because guess what? It's our first Mr. Rogers factory tour.
That's true. It's, I would say, a staple of Mr. Rogers
it's a staple of Mr. Rogers. But this one's not through picture-picture, as I would have expected. Instead, it's through the magic of just looking into the viewfinder on Mr. McFeely's video camera.
Yeah, at first, we don't find out until later that he produced this video, and so at first it just seems like he's delivering the video, but then you're like, wait.
Yeah, as he's talking about it.
Wait, you also produced the things that...
I also videotaped this. So I don't know how much there is to say about the factory tour. Mm-hmm. The music on the factory montage scene is sort of a Rhapsody in Blue thing, especially at the beginning. I was just excited that I remember the name of Rhapsody in Blue.
Okay, well, I'll be sure not to edit that out then.
Because it'd be, you want an easy YouTube video for the Tumblr.
Sure.
Get everybody to listen to Rhapsody in Blue. There's steam at one point in the factory to stretch the cloth.
Or shape it.
And Mr. Rogers asks, is there fire?
Is that fire?
Is there fire? And Mr. McFeely says, no, just water steam.
Yeah.
As opposed to fire steam?
Yes, we call it smoke.
Yeah, we call it smoke. But no, Mr. McFeely just assumes Mr. Rogers doesn't know the difference between smoke and fire. And another thing, during this, when they're assembling the sort of factory knitted and cut out bits of sweater together, they're sewing it together, and Mr. McFeely says as they put the collar on, and then the collar goes on, and Mr. Rogers says, but not by itself, it takes a person.
Yeah.
And this is when I wrote, that's a very Marxist thing to say.
Well, like, I feel like this might have been a time, or maybe just Mr. Rogers lived through a time where there was a lot of fear that in a couple of years, everyone's job is going to be replaced by robots, which is not entirely untrue.
There is an episode later where they go to a factory that makes robots.
We will shake Mr. Rogers' world with that one.
I think he goes to the factory.
It seems like one of his soapboxes that he likes to stand on.
Well, and it's interesting because I've fallen in with a rough crowd on Twitter and follow a bunch of Marxists and socialists and communists and the like. And it's a very, like, sort of that emphasis on, like, no, things don't just come from nowhere. People have to make these things. And society isn't just driven forward by ideas, it's driven forward by the things that people make, and those people are important, and we can't just forget about those people. So it's interesting to see what struck me as a very sort of Marxist sentiment coming from Mr. Rogers of all people. So there you go. Smash the state. The means of production, the means of money. I
don't have the words, Manny!
Yeah, exactly. I also don't have the words, Manny.
That was a few layers of reference we had there.
Yeah. All because I don't know why I can never remember how that got the means of production belong to the workers. Is that it? I don't know.
This whole scene that we're playing is exactly out of Grim Fandango.
Yeah, it is. I'm the CB. Go play Grim Fandango. I recommend it.
Okay, we're off track, but let's get back on.
That's our Please Won't You Be My Podcast video game recommendation for the week.
Today we're talking about video games. At the end of this factory scene, Mr. McFeely is narrating the whole thing, and he says, and then it gets on the van. He says lots of people to speedy deliver the sweaters to the store. And I was like, is this actually speedy delivery, or are you just, I don't know, rewriting history and
maybe this is why I was going to the factory, was like to get speedy delivery of this contract.
Right.
He wanted to pitch this up the ladder.
Right. And so when he says that over the narration, he's like, this could be us.
Yeah. He's just practicing his pitch for the board of directors of speedy delivery.
We get an answer to a question in this episode that you asked a few episodes ago.
Oh.
You were wondering, or we were wondering, if speedy delivery was
that's true.
Just Mr. McFeely, or if he was just an employee of a large speedy delivery. And he says in this episode, after Mr. Rogers is saying how it takes a lot of people, Mr. McFeely says, yes, well, it takes a lot of people to speedy deliver, and I'm one of those people. And so I guess he's just an employee of a larger corporation.
Yeah. Well, that he's pitching on this hot sweater contract so they could deliver these short-sleeved sweaters that this factory is
He's
making.
just one employee, but he has a lot of roles.
I realized
including producing
I realized that
pitch
it was
videos.
The 80s, and it was a very different time, but I was offended by the short-sleeved sweaters that they were making.
Fashion do what fashion wants.
Was that a thing? I don't know. I mean, they were a nice color, sort of that baby blue and white.
Fashion is as fashion does.
And then they talked sort of about, like, after the video, Mr. Rogers is like, so your photography's coming along well then. As if this was and maybe it is, an established hobby that Mr. McFeely has. He's like, oh yeah, I have a great passion for photography.
Over the years in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I've noticed that the various actors kind of transition from their role on the show to more be what their actual talents are.
Right.
Like Mr. McFeely starts off as the delivery man, and then at some point during his career, he's like, I really want to pursue documentaries. And Mr. Rogers is like, well, we can let you do that within this bubble. And we also have Handyman Negri, who starts out as a handyman, and then later he has a music store. And sort of replacing his role as the handyman, we have Bob Trow.
That's true. I mean, we're assuming that any of this is related to what these people are like
in real life.
I
don't know. It just seems like their roles...
So does it extend then that Mrs. Prolificate began as an eccentric who wears lampshades, but
was big into
telephone operating?
Well, we didn't really see a lot of episodes back then. It's possible that she was always the telephone operator. Anything else for this episode?
I mean, I've run out of notes, so I guess that is this episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Stephen, bring us home.
Next week, we are moving on to episode 1473.
It's the very next episode, isn't it, Stephen?
It is.
What are the odds?
And it'll be volume 1, episode 13. Be sure to check out pleasewon'tyoubemmy.tumblr.com for supplementary materials to the episode.
Fun pictures, weird stuff Stephen gets it in his head to do, like Photoshop King Friday into the covers of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Or, something else. That was last week. I'll probably do something.
Probably won't do that a second time.
No, I don't know. We'll probably have, what was that reference you made? That'll be up a couple days after this podcast airs.
Yeah. Our theme song
was provided by
Dan Brisbane.
I get to say something this time.
Your friend of mine.
No, you still... Okay.
It's my thing. No, it's okay. Say something over Dan Brisbane.
Our trolley transition tune was made by Rindale.
That was about Rindale, but that's fine.
We'll be back when the week is new.
We'll have more ideas for you.
Andrew, I know you'll have things. Andrew, I know you'll have things you'll want to talk about.
Many of them will be unrelated to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, like about Jackie Coogan.
I will too.
All right.
Not Jackie Coogan specifically.
I mean, I don't know that I have many more anecdotes about Jackie Coogan either.
Here's my anecdote about Jackie Coogan. I've never heard his name before, and I've just said it twice.
Congratulations.
So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please, won't you be my podcast?
Finitero perlero, that's what I always say. Hildegard Hummingbird can do anything. Toot toot. Toot toot.
Yes, Hildegard Hummingbird. I like my operas on Fridays.